Hi guys, I'm Alexandria, and in today's video I'm going to go over things that have helped me not only reach but maintain my ideal weight without being restrictive with my diet or having extreme workout routines. When I went vegan, I completely cut off like all animal-based products, but the last thing for me to give up was cheese. That was very hard, but I eventually gave it up. But what I realized was like a year and a half into it that I was starting to crave fish again. And the main reason why I ended up cutting out fish specifically was because I didn't like that we were just like taking all of the fish out of the ocean. And if I could contribute to there being more fish in the ocean, then I wanted to do that. But one thing that I realized is that I really wasn't getting one of the nutrients that I would usually get from fish, which was omega-3s. One thing that I started doing over the past, I believe probably like the last 8 months that I started doing was implementing salmon again back into my lifestyle, because that was one of the main fish that I ate often. And what I do is only buy them on certain days and from specific places. And another food that I started implementing back into my lifestyle was eggs. And the reason why I stopped eating eggs was just because it was part of the whole animal cruelty and I just didn't want to be a part of that. But another thing that I realized was I don't want to eat tofu scrambled eggs all the time. I love my tofu, but I don't want to eat tofu scrambled eggs all the time. So the eggs that I get now is this pasture raised organic eggs, mainly because one thing that I realized when I first went back to eating eggs was I definitely wanted to be mindful of the type of eggs I was getting. I didn't just want to pick up any type of eggs. And then also when I got the non-organic version of these eggs specifically, I don't know if it was because I hadn't had eggs in several years, but I just don't remember there being such a strong sulfuric smell coming from them after I ate it. So when I tried the organic, I realized I didn't have that same type of smell coming out from the eggs when I was cooking it and when I cleaned the pan after using it. So those are the only two animal-based products that I get. And for the most part, I just now eat predominantly plant-based. I've honestly felt like it has been the only lifestyle that I don't have to worry about my weight and my health as much, because I definitely before was constantly someone who struggled with what am I eating that's constantly making my weight fluctuate a lot, or what I'm eating is breaking my skin out. And what I realized is like even when I considered myself vegan and started making a lot of vegan cookies, my top of my forehead and my face was just like breaking out, and I didn't realize that I was still doing something that contributed to breaking my face out that we're going to talk about later in the video. But I'm just more mindful now of predominantly focusing on plant-based ingredients, and I've realized when I do that it's just better for my body and I'm just able to manage my weight a lot better because I'm eating foods that naturally came from the ground. The next thing that I do is I reduce the amount of oil that I consume. When I cook my own food, I'm very cautious about how much oil I'm using in my food. So I tend to make a lot of bowls. I love making bowls. I think it's like the easiest thing to make, to where you could have a lot of vegetables and greens without feeling like you're just eating the same thing every day. And so what I tend to do is mix raw with hot food, so that way I can still get the full nutrients from the raw foods but still have that enjoyment from the hot foods. So when it comes to oil specifically, I grew up basically with vegetable oil and canola oil, but as I grew older and just learning more about oils I tend to stick with, it's either grapeseed oil, avocado oil, sesame oil, and olive oil. I don't really use my grapeseed oil as much, and I used it a lot when I went plant-based, when I first went plant-based, to make cauliflower wings or to make any like fried dishes. But because I don't really eat that way anymore, it really just sits in my cabinet. And when it comes to avocado oil, I don't really buy it that often because it is very, very pricey, but it is a great oil for high heat. And when it comes to sesame oil, I tend to use that for my Asian dishes, but I use that as more of just like a light coating. And when it comes to olive oil, it's the same thing. Like I'll tend to use it as a coating rather than just like cooking a lot of stuff in olive oil. Next thing to do, which piggybacks off of the last one, is I eliminated a good 98% of processed foods. I'm glad we're moving in a direction to where we are switching to more of a plant-based lifestyle, but I think it could be easily confused with thinking just because it's plant-based means it's healthy. But just because it's plant-based doesn't necessarily mean it's healthy, especially when it comes to processed foods. So you really want to be mindful of how often you're actually eating those type of foods. But one thing that I realized when I stopped eating a lot of processed foods, when I've tremendously cut down my processed foods, is that I just felt better and I just had more energy. But when it comes to like freezer processed foods, it's probably like one or two that I'll still get, but it's very rare on occasion. Because number one, I realize when I eat processed foods, I'm still hungry at the end of the day. Like I'm still hungry like 2 hours later. So now I have to find something else to eat. And I don't know if that's necessarily because my body realizes that it's not really food, or it's because my body has become so used to eating actual food that when it eats something that's processed, it doesn't get the same nutrients and therefore it wants more. I don't know which one it is. That's still up for debate. So if you're someone who wants to reduce your processed food, one thing that has helped me is first looking at what I'm getting and then seeing if there's one with lesser amount of ingredients in it, and then also seeing if there's a plant-based version to it, and then also reducing how much I'm getting. So instead of picking up like 4 or 5 processed types of items, instead try picking up only 3 or picking up only 2, and then getting more of whole food ingredients. So that way, if you still need to rely on that processed food, you can still eat it on occasion, but you're not solely relying on it as your nutritional intake for the day. The next thing is reducing my sugar intake. So this goes back to when my face was breaking out when I had first switched to a vegan lifestyle, because I was like eating a whole bunch of vegan cookies, but I didn't realize that I thought it was just the makeup that I was using. I thought the makeup was the thing breaking me out. So I was like, oh, I can't use this type of makeup. But what I eventually realized was anytime I ended up having vegan cookies that I made, my face would break out like 3 weeks later, and it would break out everywhere. So my cheeks would break out, my forehead would break out, and it would start off with like a couple of bumps until like I had like a whole bunch of like black dots and pimples on my face. And what I started to realize was it wasn't the makeup, it was the amount of sugar I was using, because I was using coconut sugar, I was using refined sugar, I was using maple syrup, I was using all of these type of sweeteners to create this cookie, but I thought it was fine because it was vegan, but not realizing the sugar was tremendously impacting my health as well. So one thing that I had already done before to reduce my sugar intake was dilute my juice. So what I would do is fill up my cup with half cranberry and half water, or I would drink seltzer water with my cranberry juice, or I would make my own drink of using seltzer water, lemons, and honey. And it really helped me reduce the amount of sugar that I was taking, because I think when we are picking up juice, we think that it's healthy because it's still juice. But when you look at the label of the amount of sugar in a lot of these juices, it honestly has the same amount as these sodas. So I don't really buy juice anymore. And if I do, I tend to only pick up like something like pineapple juice, to where the only ingredient in the juice is pineapple. And I definitely know that those are much more pricier. I don't always get them, but just getting something to where it's like, I'll have lemon water or I'll have lime water to just have something of a different flavor besides plain water has tremendously impacted my ability to reduce the amount of sugar I'm intaking, and also just being more mindful of when I have sweets, how often I'm having them, and even more specifically when it comes to breakfast bars, because I was someone who really enjoyed her breakfast bars. I used to get the Nature Valley all the time. It was like my go-to when I didn't have my croissant for breakfast. But it wasn't until I started paying more attention to what I was eating and switching from eating a lot of processed foods to eating more natural foods that I realized that even Nature Valley and those type of breakfast bars still has a lot of sugar in it. So I'm not gonna sit here and say to never have sugar again. I think that is a very difficult thing to do, especially because everything you look at tends to have some type of sugar in it. But I do think that there are ways of being more mindful of how much sugar you're having. So if you're having something, if you're picking something up, really take a look at the sugar intake in it and see if there's something that may have less sugar, or if something says no sugar, look at the ingredients in it, because just because it says 0 sugar, it could still have things of sugar like in it. So molasses, high fructose corn syrup, that's something to where if I see high fructose corn syrup in my food, I tend to try to not buy it because it is a highly addictive type of ingredient. And what I realized is that anything that I like with high fructose corn syrup, it was just very hard for me to let go of. So I just started to just pay more attention to the ingredients rather than looking at the labels on things. And the last one is creating a workout routine that I actually enjoy. It took me a while to enjoy my workouts. It took me a while to create a workout routine. And one thing that I've learned is figuring out what works for my body. And I realized that I enjoy doing activities to where they're just more enjoyable. So if I'm doing walking in nature, or if I'm doing a bike ride, like to me, like even though it's a workout, it feels more like an enjoyable activity that I'm doing. But when it comes to my daily workouts, I realize I really don't want to go over 25 minutes of working out, and I like working out in my house. I'm not a fan of going to the gym. I just feel like I don't like when people do those type of noises from their workouts. And then I wonder if people are wiping down the machine after they're using it. And then now with social media, people privately quietly recording you to put you online of you using a machine wrong. I just don't want to be someone else's laughter. So I just enjoy working out from my apartment, and it just makes me feel 10 times better. So I really do think, especially as you get older, you're going to have to create some type of workout routine, especially because you want your body to be strong, you want your body to be healthy. So those are the things that have really helped me to not only lose weight, but also maintain my ideal weight, especially because this has been something I've struggled a lot with since high school, and now being 32 and realizing the things that I was doing before versus now, I could see why now things are more aligned with where I want to be, in a way where it doesn't feel like it's a chore, and it doesn't feel exhausting, and it doesn't feel complicated. And I think many times in the health world, it's made to seem much more complicated than it actually is. And especially working in the health field, I could definitely see where our lifestyle really impacts us in the long run. And that's something that I want to be more proactive with of my health, of even though I may not want to wake up and do a workout, I always feel better after I complete it, because I know I showed up for myself, and I know I'm doing myself a benefit in future. So I hope this video was helpful. I hope you guys got some value out of this video. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, and if you would like to see more videos like this. And thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye guys.